started. So this session, choosing a secondary school. Well, I should say, I know, I'm sure I know some of you out there. Many of you may well know me. My name is Becky Baxter. I'm actually a speech and language therapist, but I've worked supporting schools and delivering outreach to mainstream and special schools, actually, locally with a team of advisory teachers. So hopefully what you'll have at the end of this session is some practical activities and kind of strategies to put in place and so things to do to be thinking about choosing a secondary school. So what I'm going to try and go through in the next hour, what are the options? Thinking about, just talk a little bit about the school's special educational needs policy. I've got some kind of suggested questions to ask that have come up over the years. Then I'm going to particularly talk about what primary school's role might be, what secondary school's role might be, and then thinking about what's going to help success in terms of transition to whichever secondary school you decide to choose for your child. I'm going to talk very briefly a little bit about the research because I feel it's my job to share that with you to help you to make your decisions, and then we'll go through any questions. So in terms of options, we obviously have mainstream schools, which will be your potentially your local secondary school. We'll also have, and there'll be quite a lot of those in your local area, I'm sure. And then you'll have special school, specialist settings, where which are specifically for children with additional needs. I'll talk about both of those in a bit more detail in just a second. The other possible option you might come across is a mainstream school that has a specialist provision within its grounds. That might be something that you have available in your area, and the pupil then is often enrolled in that specialist provision but may well go into the mainstream school activities. Might be quite separate. If you are in a situation where you have a school like that, it'd be worth finding out more about. I'd be interested to find out more about what time spent in which kind of provision. And then the other option, actually there's two other options, isn't there? There's a combination. So some pupils may well go to a mainstream setting for part of the week and a special school for part of the week. I'm going to be honest and say I have never known that last for long. Anytime I've known a pupil do that or a family choose to do that, within kind of half a term, certainly by the end of the term, they've really chosen what they think is the best fit. And I think that's a good idea. I think it's very difficult for pupils. Where are you on one day? Where are you the next day? How am I making friends if I'm only seeing them half of the time? Where do I belong? I think there's a number of challenges that come along with that. The other option, which I haven't put on there, is about home educating. But of course, this is about choosing a school. So that option is there. But we're going to focus on these various schooling options. Each setting is different, and I would say it's a good idea to visit a variety of settings, whether it be a variety of mainstream settings or a variety of special schools or a variety of two. And I think often it's quite good to go and have a look at both options so you get an idea of where you think your child is going to do better, really, where you think they're going to fit in. It's important right from the beginning for me to say it's your choice. You get to choose predominantly where your child is going to go for secondary school. Now, occasionally you may have a situation where you apply for specialist provision, a special school, and there isn't a place, and might be allocated a place in mainstream school. Occasionally you may, and I think from speaking to people at the weekend, it may be different in different areas. Occasionally you may come across a mainstream setting that say they can't meet need. They would then have to prove that, and I would be very surprised if they couldn't actually meet need. However, obviously if they are saying they can't meet your child's needs, it may not be the inviting place that you want to choose. And the other thing I want to say at the very beginning of this talk is that I know you are going to spend a lot of time thinking about this. You're going to spend a lot of time worrying about this, I expect, going out and seeing different options, and maybe some sleepless nights. But the other thing I always like to say is that you can change your mind. So when you've decided on your secondary school, hopefully your pupil will transition into the school that you decide on, and everything will be plain sailing. But if you find yourself in a situation where that's not the case, then of course you don't necessarily start there for the next few years. If it's not working out, you can look to other places, and that may be other similar settings, or it may be a change of setting. Okay, so just to say a little bit about mainstream schools, every school is different, which is why it's worth going and having a look at a couple of different ones to see the kind of setup and the availability and how it works, really. All I would say mainstream secondary schools have some kind of learning support, whether they call it the hub or the hive, or the thing when you go to secondary school is that you're obviously now in a much bigger setting where you have loads more children, which means you tend to have a lot more children with additional needs, and so there is often more support and more resources within a secondary school, mainstream secondary school. Some classes may be set by ability, but the majority of classes are not. You're in your year 7 class and you're allocated randomly to any year 7 class. Normally there's lots of movement around the building, which often people worry about a bit, think, oh, how's our pupil going to manage, how they're going to get lost. I'd say majority of students by half term, they've cracked it, really. They're very good. They're way better at me at finding the science block and knowing which classroom they're going to, where they're going next. And that comes from that experience of doing it, done it for 6-7 weeks and actually becoming much more independent in those settings. Lots of swapping of peers in classes, so peers going maybe not so much in year 7, but certainly as they move through school, you'll be in different classes with different pupils at different times. Some schools will have some year 7 specific provisions. They might do things a little bit differently in year 7. They may have some particular classes for children with additional needs, and so again, it'd be useful to find out about that. And you tend to have large numbers of pupils, and again, people often feel a bit nervous about that. Primary schools often feel very nervous about that, but often our pupils manage very well when they're in terms of that bigger school setting. You may have a range of more vocational options, again, very dependent on the school, but you may have much more availability in a range of courses and qualifications. Things like BTECs may well be there, and I'll talk a little bit about additional qualifications as we go through. And a range of awards or qualifications, as I was saying. So there have things like ASDAN or laser awards, maybe things like entry-level exams. So it'll be worth finding out a bit more about that. But I shall talk about that in the frequently asked questions. In terms of special schools or specialist provision, very similarly, every school is different. So again, if you've got a couple of special schools that you are available to you or might be available to you, it might be worth going again to see what the different options are like. They are often set by ability, so you're in a particular class with children, I wouldn't say who have similar needs, but it may be that the children with more significant needs, more additional needs, more physical needs, may be in one particular class, and then your more able communicators may well be in a different class. Movement around the campus is really varied, which is why it's worth going to see your different specialist schools. Some schools, they have movement like those mainstream schools, tend to obviously be a smaller site and maybe less movement around the school. And again, it can be dependent on the class that you're in. If you've got a class with more physical significant needs, they'll probably try and limit some of that movement around the campus. It tends to be smaller numbers on site, but also smaller numbers in the classroom. You're not likely to have a class of 30. You're more likely to have smaller classes with a higher number of adults within that class. What I didn't say about the mainstream setting is typically our children in the UK have additional adult support working with them in the classroom throughout primary, and that will continue into secondary. How that looks might be slightly different, but you still have that high level of additional adult input. In specialist schools, tend to not have that additional adult. However, you have more adults to the number of children. And again, you may have more vocational options. Potentially there might be a wider range of assessments offered, but again, this will be something to find out about what's on offer in your area. Do they do GCSEs? Is that an option? And again, that can be very varied. In terms of special educational needs policy, every school must have one of these. Normally it's on their website, so you should be able to find it on the website. If not, it's definitely it has to be available to parents, so ask where you're going to be able to find it. What might be included in there, kind of the objectives for the school. What are their objectives in terms of supporting children with additional needs? Might have or should have in there key people in terms of their roles and responsibilities. So those may well be the people you try and contact when you're looking at these additional visits. Talk about any admissions policies. Are there particular qualifications or levels that you need to have to get into a particular setting? Again, thinking about special schools, they may well have requirements around what child and what level of needs they're able to meet. We'll talk about accessing the school and different options around access, curriculum and assessment monitoring. That information will be in there. Talk about additional resources that are available. Talk about how they work with parents and their link with parents, and also links with other external professionals, how they work with others. All of that information should be covered in there. It's a really good place to start to have a look at. And when you go on your visits, if you've had a look at that, there may be some information that you want to follow up on, or maybe check when you do your visit, part of your visit. Oops, I'm clicking between two screens, not very well at the moment. Then I've just put on there some kind of questions to ask when you do go and visit. Obviously, you're going to be asking about the school's provision for children with additional needs. How do they support children with additional needs, pupils with additional needs, and what does that look like? I'd be asking if they have any experience of pupils with similar needs. Now, that's not, there's no right or wrong answers to these. It's just worth asking those sorts of questions. I would say we know many schools who have never supported a pupil with Down syndrome before, who do it really, really successfully. I would say I'd be asking about children with other additional needs as well and how they support those pupils. Talking about options that are available in terms of training and support and how they've accessed similar things for other kind of needs. I'll be asking questions about how they communicate with parents generally. What's their system for communication, and specifically parents of pupils with additional needs? What other systems do they have in place already? Ideally, you would expect them to have some kind of system, but if not, definitely I'll be looking for flexibility in terms of what they think that you might be needing. What does it look like? What does support in the classroom look like? When you do your visit, it'd be nice to be able to arrange a visit when won't be your first visit, once you've spoken to them, going to a class where you can observe some children or pupils with additional needs working in the classroom. And what does that support look like across school? Thinking about what provision is around at break times and lunch times, what provision is around about accessing after school clubs or going on residential trips, for example, those sorts of questions. And how do you involve parents in the pupils' learning and development? We know our pupils are going to need a bit more support in terms of accessing some of these systems, and in terms of support with homework, possibly support with homework, I should say, actually. If they've set differentiated homework appropriately, pupils may well be doing it on their own, but knowing where it is, knowing where to find it, knowing where the resources are, they might need a bit of help with from parents to start with. How do you assess pupils and when? Again, I'll be asking about how they assess all pupils, and then what's their expectation around assessing pupils with additional needs. Is it that they're part of the whole school system? Is that going to be appropriate? If it's not appropriate, what else do they do to make sure that you are measuring success? Any specialist areas? It might be that they're particularly sports focused, or they're particularly performing arts focused. It'd be worth knowing about that, particularly if your child has a particular interest. Be asking about if they have mixed classes, or do they set by ability and any exceptions. I know, having worked with a school not far from here, we had a pupil where when I went in to visit them, they said, oh, but in fact, before I even got there, they'd been in contact to say they were having some challenges around behaviour. And when I went to the class, I was like, whoa, they are not the only pupil in this class having some challenges around behaviour. Might be the only person that you contacted me about, but certainly that's not the biggest issue in this classroom. And actually, if you move this child to a different class, you probably, we did actually solved many of our behaviour issues for my pupil. I can't say what's going on in the rest of the class now, but certainly for our pupils, being with more able peers who are able to model, whether it be ideal learning or behaviour or communication or speech and language, will be kind of where we're looking. And we want flexibility in whatever setting you're thinking about, mainstream or special. We want them to be in with the good talkers, if you like, those who are able to use those strategies and supports and scaffold some of that communication. You might want to find out if they have a sixth form, and again, what's the criteria for getting into that sixth form, for accessing that sixth form. I was talking to somebody on Sunday who whose daughter's just gone into the sixth form, first time that they've had pupil who's not kind of met the grades, the criteria for that setting. And is it possible to talk to other parents of pupils with additional needs? And again, that might not be, but it might be part of their, if they're setting up an open evening, they may well have some pupils or their parents who are willing to run a session. And then finally, I would have a look at how classrooms are set up. Are they in rows? Are they single desks? Are they small groups? What do you think is going to work well for your child? I'd ask about activities and resources at lunchtimes. What are there clubs running at lunchtimes? If there's not, what available? And often, particularly in mainstream settings, they may well have a learning support centre, and that may well organise or provide additional options for pupils with additional needs at those break and lunchtimes. You might have a question about the security at the school. Again, depending on your child, how open the school is, how easy it is to get in and out. But again, we know it's some issues arise early on for some students, but for the majority, those issues are solved early on. What school trips are programmed and at what stage? So you can be thinking about when we need to be starting to think about access to those trips. Do they have any internal professionals, and how do they access external professionals? So obviously, particularly thinking about speech and language therapy, do they have, in mainstream schools, you wouldn't normally have a speech and language therapist based in the school. In special schools, you may well have a speech and language therapist based in the school. That might sound great, although probably most children in that school need to see that person. So again, is it one person? Is it a team? What time do they have? Typically, how much time do they have with individual pupils? What's kind of their maximum package? And if it's external, how do they access that service? If they're coming in delivering some intervention and support, who's responsible for making sure that then follows through in school? Is it a particular teaching assistant who is more experienced and trained in terms of speech and language therapy? Okay. So thinking about primary school's role, I'm not doing too badly, their role really is to prepare the secondary school. They've got to provide information so that secondary school really know all about the pupil before they get there. And ideally, they're going to know most of that information before they come for their first, not their look around visit, but their first planned transition visit. They should know this information already. So they may well be organising meetings, particularly EHCP meetings, providing a copy of the EHCP, providing a pupil profile. You've got a kind of a individual, just A4 sheet, maybe 2 sides, but it's not normally longer than that, where it's got the key information about the pupil, about their pupil's needs. May have an All About Me book, which tells you about where my learning's at, gives you examples of my work. That's really helpful for secondary schools, so they can get out a visual idea of what their expectations are going to be. And their other role is, of course, preparing the pupil. So thinking about, okay, we need a transition book. This is what's going to be happening, teaching them what's going to happen when they go on these visits, planning the visits. I'll come on to that in a second. Social story about what happens in those this setting, what's going to happen in this setting, what language you might need to use, asking questions to peers, what does that look like? Developing key skills in everyday activities, thinking about independence, being able to move around the school. We've got a nice opportunity to practice moving around primary school, which may be a more secure location before we get to secondary school. All of those kind of skills would be incredibly helpful. Secondary school's role is really taking all that information on board. So they will get a copy of the EHCP and any other documents, reports that you think are suitable. And they will obviously read those and remember all of that information. But equally, what's going to be helpful is meeting with you to find out about your child and meeting your child, because that's how they're going to start to see. We want to be thinking about preparing all staff. Obviously, all staff that the pupil is going to be working with. I'd be advocating for training of all of those staff members, whether it be tutors or the geography teacher or the drama teacher. But equally, I'd also be thinking about any staff working in school who are going to be coming into contact with the pupil. Would be great to have a bit of training for them as well. So things like the office staff and the PE coach who comes in and those sorts of people. Their role is kind of planning those visits. So when the pupil comes on a transition visit, whether it be a whole class, whole school visit, or whether it be an additional visit that they're going to do, there really needs to be a plan in place. Now, the secondary school are obviously going to know they're going to be planning what's happening in their school for that visit, but they won't know about the individual's needs at this stage. And it's really important that they work with the primary school. Okay, how would you do this? How would you differentiate this? Because they're going to need that support. And they may need to think about how to make school more accessible if necessary, thinking about timetabling. So thinking about a pupil with some additional physical needs. He's got some additional seating, and we've got some careful plans around how we move that seating around school, making sure that there's one on one building, one in the other, specialist chair, so we don't have to move that between buildings. When's that happening? Who's responsible for that, etc. So what the secondary school may well do is put in place some extra induction days for pupils with SEN. Lots of mainstream secondary schools do that anyway. Special schools often don't do as many, actually, as you might think. But of course, all of their pupils are coming with additional needs, so they will have their transition plan, but often actually find that mainstream schools have a more in-depth transition plan. And that may well be for any pupil with additional needs, or those who are just a bit more vulnerable or a bit more nervous about starting secondary school. Sometimes they have extra induction days, sometimes they do things over the summer holidays, sometimes they have them come in at the beginning of term, just the year sevens, etc. You're unlikely to have more visits for the pupil to visit the secondary school, to become familiar with the site, familiar with the setting, familiar with the expectations. And again, if you're doing those sorts of visits, brilliant, but what's the plan for those visits? And also more visits for staff to visit the primary school to see how it's working successfully at the moment, because they're going to learn loads from those sorts of visits. So again, making sure they're coming to visit a range of things, not just necessarily working in the classroom, but actually how do they manage lunchtimes, for example, how do they manage PE? Some schools may have a buddy mentoring scheme, so where every pupil is allocated a buddy further up the school, and they look out. That can work quite well. And often secondary schools invite pupils to specify a friend, some peers that they'd like to continue to be in school. That may all be in their tutor group. Sometimes those friendships continue forever. Sometimes they don't even last to the end of the first week, I don't think. But it's a familiar face, somebody that I know, somebody who knows me, somebody who knows I've got a conversation diary in my bag, and maybe will prompt me to get it out. it's really about both schools working together. So ideally, by year 5, don't panic if you're in year 6, you haven't done it yet, but in an ideal world, if you've made your decision about which school that you want to go to by your year 5 EHCP review meeting, you'll name your school there, put it down in the paperwork, and then it can be agreed, and we can then start thinking about that transition towards the end of year 5 and into year 6. I said the primary need to share as much information as possible with the new school. It's why it's important they start working together early. So they start feeding in this information, getting lots of opportunity to share and for the schools to work together and to work with, meet the pupil as much as possible. That's going to help secondary school plan how to meet your child's needs. And working on those key skills, that knowledge vocabulary, is just going to set pupils up for success. I would say that's often where we see some potential challenges, that planning and that work hasn't happened. We've just kind of gone, oh, you're off to a different school today, off you go, and hang on a minute, pupil doesn't know quite what's happening, what they're expected to do, what rules they've got to follow, what the plan is. They haven't got supports in terms of going and asking some questions and knowing how to communicate properly. They don't with new people or new questions to ask. They don't know some of the key vocabulary. This is your tutor. What's a tutor? I've got no idea. But if we've done some work on all of that, it's going to be much more successful, likely to be much more successful. I've mentioned asking questions. It's amazing when you see pupils go and don't take any of this stuff that they've got at primary school. It's really important. All of those supports that they need and they have go with them for the visits, which sounds really obvious, but you'll be amazed by the number of times it doesn't happen. And I'd be wanting to think about how we are adapting and developing those communication supports to go into secondary school. So like I said, go in with, you're going to go to an English lesson. What questions could you ask the English teacher? What questions could you ask friends that you meet there? What school have you come from? What's your favourite subject? How are you feeling about going to secondary school? What's your name? What are you interested in? Those sorts of things. So it's really down to primary school to make sure they take that equipment with them on visits, or ensure that that equipment goes if they're not supporting the visit. Often it can be helpful for a member of staff who knows the pupil well to be involved in that lesson, to demonstrate how they would support that lesson. But of course, then you want your secondary school team there observing that and really learning from that. Secondary obviously need to listen to primary school. They've been doing it for a few years now, I expect, and they know what they're doing, and it's really important that they take on board that knowledge to make sure it's successful. And I've put on there in bold, but I think I've said it about a million times already, visits need to be planned. So really need to have a focus. Just going along to a science lesson with a Bunsen burner with no planning, and then going, it didn't work very well, we had some issues, is actually teaching our child, if you go to this setting, you can do whatever you like, turn it on, turn it off. So it really needs to be a very clear plan to make that successful. What's going to help success? So I've just put on here some, I kind of think thought of these as my key areas, and I'm going to go through each one in a little bit more detail. Independence. If the pupil is the more independent the pupil, the better it's going to be, whichever setting they are going to. Now, as I said, if you're going to mainstream school, you are likely to still have a high level of additional adult support, whereas, but we don't want that person, what's the word I'm looking for? Hampering independent skills. We want them to have in their mind, really want this pupil to be really independent. And actually, we tend to see a huge step forward in terms of independence when we transition to secondary school. And that's really about the expectations of secondary school staff. If the pupil is going to special school, they are unlikely to have that one-to-one adult support. And again, that's when independence is going to be really, really important. I'll talk a little bit more about that. Supporting friendships and peer interactions. It's obviously one I'm very focused on. Having a planned transition, as I said, there's lots of things that I would ideally have as part of transition. Thinking about developing positive relationships between parents and schools. And then I've just got my final point around realistic expectations. So in terms of delivering independence, as I said, we see huge progress when pupils move into secondary school, and that's not suddenly over the 6 weeks holiday our pupils have learned a whole load of new skills. Really is around, oh, you're at secondary school, this is what is expected now. You're going to manage your own stuff, you're going to get your own resources out, you're going to be able to read a planner, you're going to get to lessons on time, and on the whole pupils do really well. Throughout secondary school, our children are still going to continue to improve their self-help skills as long as they're a focus, I think. As long as people are making sure we're pushing that independence forward. They're going to be developing and refining skills, fine and gross motor skills, speech and language skills, which support independence. The more able you are to do those things, manage books and folders and pencil cases and getting changed and clothing, etc., it's going to help with independence. But like I said, it does need a focus and targets, and I would have that included in the IEP, or whatever schools are calling their half-termly targets. And when you have your EHCP reviews from, well, I'd have them from reception, but we're thinking about kind of years 4, 5, 6, really thinking about focusing in on that independence. I've got somebody just going to year 3, and I was like, right, we need to get you away, get that adult moving away. And that when they're thinking about this independence, I'm always saying to secondary schools, you want to measure that. I mean, that progress in the first half term that's going on right now for our secondary school pupils is massive. They learn loads of new skills. And it's important that we recognise that and we see that and celebrate that huge progress that they've made. Doing for time. Need to get a move on. So having and learning appropriate social and class behaviours. Can they work as part of a group or alongside their peers? Not working alongside an adult is going to be really important wherever, whichever sort of setting they're going to. Can they sit appropriately and access listening input times? Now, they're one of the biggest challenges for our pupils, those listening times, because given the hearing, verbal short-term memory, auditory processing, speech language difficulties, they're not going to be able to follow all that information as you get into secondary schools, particularly mainstream secondary schools, although surprisingly I see it quite a lot in special schools as well. These listening input times get longer. They're going to need supports for listening. They may well be working on some note taking, whether it be just being given a list of keywords or pictures and ticking them off. So I'm thinking about what this input is about, taking that information with it. They might have some written information to read, depending if they're a reader, to follow along. We might be starting to take some of our own notes, might be imitating the adults writing down some key information. I'm reading it and I'm writing it down. It's visually going in for me. Moving around school, I've talked about following everyday routines, knowing about coming in, setting myself up, getting my equipment out, having a list of things I need, getting that myself, getting out my own pen, my own glue stick, my own book, finding a clean page, etc. Can they manage busy, unstructured times? Thinking about moving through school. Sometimes pupils may well, if they're at secondary school, particularly those with some additional motor difficulties, may leave class a little bit early to avoid that kind of corridor crush, but I'm not great in those experiences either, but we manage them. And can they ask for help? Are they able to say, I'm not sure where I'm supposed to be, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be doing, because that is going to be a really useful skill. There's just some examples there from Twinkle. So you're trying to find a new classroom, but now running late and you're lost. How are you feeling? Who should you ask for help? It's just these kind of little scenarios to practice through. You'd have them in your social story. They'll need a bit of adapting from here, I expect, depending on your pupil. But really thinking about there are going to be problems. Things are going to come up. And it's that unknown. What do they do? The bus isn't there. What am I supposed to do? Go back into the office and say the bus isn't here or the taxi isn't here. Can't find my bus, etc. In terms of promoting independence, knowing the class rules and expectations, knowing how to read a timetable before you start, having a copy of the planner, having a copy of the timetable, putting in things that they do throughout the week. If they have a, I don't know, a swimming lesson or a social club, they go to brownies or whatever it is. So I know, I start to read on my timetable. I know what's on Saturday morning. Let me have a look. Oh yeah, I've got to go to brownies or what have you. If they know how to use those systems already, they're going to have a much smoother transition. Having personal books and social stories that tell me about what year 7 pupils do. What do I do at lunchtime? Where am I allowed to go? What am I allowed to do? What sort of activities can I do? What am I allowed to take in? What can I get out of my bag and show others? Teaching those routines so it is familiar to them. They know what they're doing. Teaching new environments, large school sites, new classes, teach all of that. I would say I'd be thinking I need to teach you some rules, expectations about what happens in these situations. You're going on a school trip, you're going on a coach. What do you do on the coach? What's going to happen when you get there? You are coming home. Don't panic about it. And planning inclusion in all school activities. So not just thinking about in lessons, but all of that other important things that are going on as well. Thinking about how school manage behaviour, the positive behaviour, the good behaviour, and the bad behaviour, the unwanted behaviours. Again, if you can pre-teach some of these systems, start using that language at home. If you know that the secondary school give out plus points, you can start using that vocabulary. Oh, you made your bed this morning, brilliant. You can have a plus point, pop that up on the wall, so they start to say, oh, these things are positive things. These are great things. That I know about. When I go into secondary school and I get one of these things, I've got a bit of an idea about what it is. May well be that you need to adapt here, whatever system they're using in school. Secondary schools often use virtual systems. There are these points. I've got 1 behaviour point. I've got 101 behaviour points. What does that mean to me? Do I even understand 101? Building reward systems are often really helpful, so I can see it building up. I've got 1, I get 10. I can go home and say I've got 10 plus points today. I've recorded in the back of my planner or on my daily record. To go home, my parents are going to ask me, I'm going to get it out, I'm going to show them. I'm thinking about those age-appropriate motivators. That's really important. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in just a second. The other thing is, if the pupil needs some breaks, need kind of a brain break or a movement break, or they need a bit of a motivator in terms of a reward, thinking about what can happen in class. So we're not coming out, we're not missing too much of the learning, we're not going off to do something that's not necessarily age appropriate. I want to be in the class, bit of a break for me for whatever reason, and then back into the lesson. Things that can be helpful in terms of targeting skills for the pupil: managing their uniform, being able to tie a tie or shoelaces, or having a tie on elastic, or whatever it might be. Managing their personal needs, thinking about our young ladies, thinking about how they're going to manage things like periods. Reading a timetable, I've mentioned. How do they order food in the in a cafe, ready to go into ordering food at the canteen, going up, asking for food, going up, paying. Any kind of experience you can be doing out and about to prepare them for that's going to be helpful. How are they going to get in and out of school? Are they going on the bus? And if they are, what do they do on the bus? We see more challenges around behaviour, I think, on buses than we do on anything else, because nobody's thought, when they get to school, oh yeah, I've got a clear plan in place, but we haven't thought, when they're coming into school, what is it they're actually doing on there? What's the route? Where do they get dropped off, picked up? And how do they manage a homework planner? What is a planner? Can they find the right page? How do they manage the pages, to folding them down so you can easily find the next page, etc.? All helpful. In terms of supporting friendships and peer interactions, may well need physical resources to support that interaction, so it doesn't rely on the kind of speech and language and chatting, which is often what happens at secondary school. So access to equipment. Now, there may well be lots of pupils accessing these sorts of equipment. Might be that there's football going on outside. It might be that I can join in with that, or it might be that that is a very fast, busy, fierce environment, and I need a second environment that I can access with some friends. Access to clubs. Often secondary schools run a number of different clubs throughout lunchtimes and after school clubs, making sure we know about them, we know where they are, we know what happens in them, we know we maybe need to go to them a few times to experience them, to decide if we want to be involved in those. thinking about our language supports that we need. Those question cards I've mentioned, some pupils who have joke cards, they get them out and they just share them around their friends and tell each other jokes, take in some magazines to show, but I've got a physical there that's going to support that language. Having a conversation diary, and at secondary school that may well be just like a normal paper diary that I just take in, turn to the page and it says, oh, I watched Strictly Come Dancing on Saturday, who's your favourite? But it's a reminder of there to prompt me about what to say. And then mobile phone. Well, I'll let you navigate mobile phones, but once everybody's got a mobile phone, having a mobile phone, sharing numbers, keeping an eye on mobile phones, etc. I do some groups for young adults, 16-year-olds, and we introduced WhatsApp groups. Wow, that was that was very interesting. I think I had something like 47 messages before I got home from group, all from the same person. No replies needed. Just keep firing messages. That's okay. But again, we need some education around how to use them and what the rules are. I've put on there may need support to move on to next steps. I think this is a really important one for parents. Sometimes our children are interested in a particular thing and they don't seem to move on from that thing, and it's up to us to really make sure that they are being exposed to whatever is the age norm. So what are 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds, what films do they watch, what music do they listen to, what TV programs, or probably not TV programs, it seems, what YouTube channels do they go on, what vloggers do they like, but if they know about those things and they're able to interact with others about those things, having some of those communication supports around those age appropriate topics is really important. Maybe that your young person still likes watching children's TV program, that's okay, but it's not what they're going to be talking about at school. It's important for them to know about what other peoples are going to be interested in if they're going to have those interactions and relationships. And all of that is going to involve some adult support to set up, but really want to be thinking about not having those adults there. How do they manage those situations? Maybe a lot of observation going on, but really thinking about that independence. Break and lunchtimes can be challenging, but I'll be thinking about what happens at break and lunchtimes for all pupils, and then what's available for pupils with additional needs. Normally, as I said, there's clubs and activities. They provide joint interests. There's a topic for me to talk about. Are you going to computer club at lunchtime? Brilliant, I'll see you there. What level are you on? I may have some questions around that, etc. They often provide a bit of structure, which supports that interaction and participation with peers, which can be really beneficial. What clubs are available after school as well is important. What supports are needed to access these times. So it might be that the pupil needs some additional adult support to access those clubs. It might be that they don't. And again, I think it's important when that adult support is there, we're looking at stepping it back. So we're always thinking about independence. Might need some support at the beginning of the year, but as they become more familiar with the club, etc., and the expectations and the rules, they're more independent. And I've talked about communication supports, but making sure they are available at clubs at those out of lesson times, and that whoever the adults are who are supporting those times know about them. They're part of that team who get that training and information. Plan transition I've already mentioned, but planning those additional visits, making sure there's a clear goal. Why are the secondary school visiting the primary to observe literacy? Actually, they've been and observed once. This time they're going to step in and the primary school person's going to observe and give some tips, give some strategies, give some support in terms of that training. Really helpful. May have a transition book that's got photos in and simple sentences at the child's level that tells them about the environment, the staff, expectations, what to do if there's a problem. All about me. I've talked about examples of work that they've done on their own and examples of work they've done with support, taking that with them, showing teachers, showing friends, showing pupils, provides communication supports. Pupil profile needs to be in place, needs to be updated so that when they go to secondary school no doubt need to update it quite early on in terms of the new setting, but actually it should be rare for staff right from the beginning to know what are the strengths and needs of the pupil. And really it's all about actively teaching these new expectations and situations. So about developing a positive relationship between parents and the school, communication is really key. And one of the questions I'll be asking on the visits is how regularly do the school meet with parents of children who have an EHCP, have additional needs? Is it half-termly? Should be no less than half-termly. How would they communicate an immediate concern or question? Do they have a communication book? Do they use email? Do they have an online platform that they use? And really, right from the beginning, trying to build those positive relationships. You're going to know more about Down syndrome. You're certainly going to know way more about your pupil than they're going to know. And we want them to be able to come to you as a source of support, to be able to ask you questions. All this, we're thinking about this trip that's coming up. We want to ask for your input. This is not going so well. We're having an issue around accessing the canteen. Have you got any ideas about how we can support that better? And I've just put on the bottom there about remembering to communicate the positives. We all like to say when things are going wrong about anything. I only ever fill a survey in if I've got a complaint, I think, that I want to file. But it's really important, and you are going to have to do that. But it's really important to remember to communicate when things are going well. Oh, that's brilliant. I saw that piece of history. Well, it was absolutely brilliant. I'm so pleased they did that bit independently. Rah, rah. Or hasn't it gone well this first half term in terms of settling in? And having kind of everybody having realistic expectations, really. Sharing what are your expectations and aspirations for your child with the school. I remember going to do some school training, and the relief, the audible relief, when school staff realised we weren't expecting 11 GCSEs, was quite remarkable. So making sure that school are aware of what is important to you, that if it is important that the child is included with their local peers, is independently moving around school, is managing a timetable, that they know that, and that we are aware and we're measuring all of that important stuff. So I've put on the importance of social skills, peer interaction, communication, independence, manage yourself. They're all, I would say, maybe argue more important than some of the academic progress. Of course, we want both, but making sure that school are aware of that, because often they're very focused and under pressure around the academic progress. And again, thinking about how they're going to measure and celebrate all of that. Also, what's kind of your end goal? And you may well not know that when they start in year 7, but if you've had that conversation about what qualifications are important, as the whole range within schools, some of our pupils may well do some GCSEs, some pupils may well do some alternatives, entry-level qualifications, more vocational qualifications. Others may just get a certificate that said I did covered the following topics in English, and that's what I'm going to pick up. But whatever it is, we're making sure that our pupil is making progress and that we're all happy with where we're going, really. Coming back to that kind of communication. I said I would just finish on a little bit of research. The first study there was a study where we surveyed parents of pupils with Down syndrome across the UK. What the kind of messages or key messages I thought in terms of today's talk: pupils in special school were rated as having significantly greater needs than those in mainstream schools. Pupils in mainstream schools are reported to receive a high level of TA support, whereas there's less of that additional one-to-one adult support, high level of adult support in special schools. And the majority of pupils with Down syndrome are attending mainstream primary schools in the UK, although we do see more of a split into secondary school. We don't know why that is, and talk a lot about my experiences around why that might be, but in terms of the research, we didn't include that. And the second one there was the views of educators. Now that's just from educators in mainstream settings. There's a lack of clarity around the roles and responsibilities of the teacher and the teaching assistant. Sometimes those additional adults kind of taking on more of the teacher role, which is certainly what we don't want to be happening, and all staff reporting the need for additional training. The top study there, pupils included in mainstream schools show gains of more than 2 years in spoken language and 3 years in literacy. That study was comparing children in mainstream schools and special schools. It's quite an old study now, but when this study was done, inclusion was just getting going. So we had pupils in special school and pupils in mainstream school who were of comparable levels. As I've said, now we have children with more complex needs in special schools versus children in mainstream schools. So it's we can't compare those two groups equally. Gains in maths, general knowledge and social independence, and less significant behaviours for our children in mainstream schools. With effective teaching time being reduced in special schools, so spending more time on transport, physical care, therapies and slower moving pupils. That sort of research continues to go on around the world, and findings are very, very similar. Children in mainstream schools performing significantly higher in reading, maths and writing. Children in special schools spending less time on those academics. Children with lower, actually they found that children with lower cognitive scores in mainstream schools outperformed children with higher cognitive scores in special schools. So actually children who were less able in terms of those cognitive levels actually doing better in mainstream schools than some of those more able children in special schools. And pupils more likely to be included in some of those PE, music, lunch break than for academic subjects, and that particularly we see that when we have those combined placements that I mentioned at the beginning. What does that mean for us, really? We want to be looking for a focus on literacy and numeracy throughout the day. Whichever setting you're looking at, I want to be seeing how much of that academic learning is going on. Might also be asking about what homework comes home, because we know that our pupils benefit from more repetition and checking that homework is coming home and it is suitable. I'd be looking for our pupils to be with those more able peers to support social skills and speech and language opportunities, again, whichever setting you choose. It's important that we have friends with a range of needs, and accessing local groups, I think, is really important, and looking for models, positive models of behaviour, as I mentioned about my young friend earlier. If I'm surrounded by those good role models, I'm likely to be watching, copying, imitating and performing. And then I put on the end there, as I said right at the beginning, it's your decision. Not sure I've made it any easier, but it's got more information about it. So I put on there, I think your gut feeling, when you go and visit, you'll get a feeling about what's right for your child. And it's not always experience. Having had a pupil before wouldn't be my main thing to look for, but it's actually willingness and flexibility. Prepared to understand and find out about Down syndrome and your child as an individual. That's what you're looking for. Yeah, bring them in, want to meet them. Got some extra visits planned. Fantastic. Bring your All About Me book. Where can I get training? Fab. Having good communication with settings and parents, as I mentioned. Be realistic, it's new for everyone, and there will be issues. Sure, there will, whichever school you choose, there are bound to be some things that come up, but it's about working together. And your child's needs will change throughout education, and it's really important that everybody's kind of working together to support them through.